the prospect of making sounds, of making faces, of doing things that involve looking weird, that was not an option for me. It was not even something that I'd seen as a possibility, that if I'm feeling anger, I could sit in my room and make an angry face and move some of that energy through and allow myself to find the message underneath it. And that's what I also bring into a lot of my workshops. Like, it's actually very playful and childish and silly at times, because we realize how many masks we've collected through this box that stops us from really just being raw humans expressing. So yes, sounding, the movement, the unshaming is, in my opinion, a foundational aspect of healing.
That was basically always the difficulty in the language I had with emotional release. Like, we're talking about acceptance, but in the language, it's like we want to let go of something. Like, when I let go of something, I'm holding it, I'm letting go, and it falls somewhere. Like, I want to get rid of it. And I feel like in what you're sharing, Ashley, it's fully like focusing on the process without necessarily having any other goal than expanding our capacity to be with an emotion and to expand the box in that way. I found that interesting to listen to, and as you said, like very much in line with like principles of process-oriented approaches. Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Bypassers podcast with Jannick, Ashley, and Tim. This week, we talked about possibilities. Ashley made an amazing training, and she learned all about communicating healthily. She learned about radical responsibility and the relationship to our bodies, about processing our emotions and tapping into our feelings. And she even showed us an amazing exercise that I myself went through. It went pretty deep. So I suggest you listen to the whole thing and have fun. Okay, guys, so we experienced 2 minutes of absolute chaos. Jannick was just disappearing from the screen for no reason. And then we found out that Ashley's new glasses look like she's wearing a fake nose. And this is what it looked like.
Also, I've just realized that these glasses kind of look like I'm wearing a fake nose.
Yeah, that's so true. Fuck.
That's so true. Holy shit, what the fuck? Now I can unsee it.
No. Oh my God.
So, boys, jokes aside of my fake nose on my glasses, I really want to tell you about my experience on the past weeks at this training, the Expand the Box training, because there's a lot of topics that were covered there, such as self-responsibility, such as what are feelings and emotions, about how to heal emotions that are all things we're very in touch with. But they did it in a very different, quicker way than we're used to with the Neo emotional release work. And there's a lot of things happened there that that's a very vague statement, but I basically feel like it was another up level of being able to hold space for not just myself, but in regards to when I've observed them, the facilitators, navigating people through triggers. So I'd say less about taking someone in a therapeutic process, but like if you're in a sharing circle or you're in a one-on-one setting or like with coaching or feedbacking, that whenever a trigger normally arises, let's be honest, the examples that we've been given from previous teachers is normally like, thank you for sharing, or that sounds like a mother topic, you should look into that. And then people don't actually find resolution in that moment of what the trigger is, or it just gets put back on them and there's no healing on that moment. It's just separation again. And I learned a lot of techniques here, and sometimes they go into really the minutest details about how to listen or how to speak, like the different ways of listening, different ways of speaking. But actually you're like, oh fuck, actually I didn't even know that I'm unconsciously still stuck in my box. And the box is essentially all of your rules, beliefs, conditioning, trauma, how you grew up. It's this safe space that you operate in. It's the place of humor that you use to avoid things. Probably what we do. We're in our box probably quite a bit in this podcast at times when we don't want to go serious. Kind of a joke, but it's really interesting to see like how how the box is operating.
Hilarious.
And how we're communicating. And like that, basically the training brings you into what they call a liquid state. So for those 4 or 5 days, you just feel like you're like, what am I? Who am I? I don't exist. Like people's bodies react. I, at one point in one of the exercises, was having like a full on acid trip completely sober, just staring at someone's face while we're sharing, and then she was morphing into like a cat, and I saw the matrix behind her, and I was like, I think I might be in the liquid state. And the purpose of that is to reshape after that your box is different and you're navigating the world in a different way. And
bring us into the liquid state. Talk no more. Talk no more. I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped to try this. So you told us, you said like, I have a fun idea. Like, just let's pretend we're in a sharing circle, and you just show us what you learned about like how to listen. And I say something, and you like talk to me in that way. And Jannick has to guess. Like Jannick has to see and analyze if he can guess the technique behind that.
I mean, so first of all, it works when there's an active trigger, like not when we pretend that there's a trigger. Second of all, I wasn't finished explaining, so I'd like to just share a little bit more before we go into like practical aspects, because there's
I'm holding my excitement back.
Okay. It's okay. I appreciate your excitement, Tim. You're excited.
Push it down.
Okay. Let's just wait for it. Maybe he's triggered now. We can work with that.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
triggered.
good. Well,
let's just keep triggering Tim until we have something to work
Tim in seconds. Yeah.
I'm always the one being triggered. We played ping pong, insult ping pong, and I was always the asshole.
I talked about insult ping pong with the teacher, and she was like, "That's very interesting. Why would you do that?"
That's the best possible way to respond to that.
Yeah.
Okay, Ashley, go on. Just feed us with more
the first
cool
question,
stuff.
the topic I wanted to bring in is because we talk about self-responsibility a lot. It's the phrase thrown around a lot. And in this training, I got a whole newer perspective on it, of not just viewing my life and viewing patterns, viewing things that have happened, viewing my position in the world in a place of like, okay, but like someone else will fix it, or someone else will do it, or yeah, like that happened to me. And it was giving a very harsh but very accurate view of like, how do you move from child to adult to high to radical self-responsibility. And that I realized so much growing up that the responsibility in itself is a word that has so much charge to it. It's like, oh, it's heavy as expectations, right? When you're responsible, it's a burden and it's difficult. So of course I and people do not want to take responsibility also for themselves and for their life. So it's easier to like outsource it to gurus, to teachers, to the government, etc. They're very anti government. I love it. It's like quite anarchy vibes in the training. But
Cool.
yeah, it just helped to bring this whole new perspective. And the second perspective shift that really was big for me was that everything is a fucking story. Everything is a story. And how can any story be true? Because in any moment a story can change, and whether it's true or not changes inside, so it's not necessarily true. So then it really helped me catch a lot of these thoughts and beliefs that keep coming up through the day. That I even have this tool, like when a thought is coming up that you're like, that's not a healthy thought. They're literally like, bang, like you're shooting the thought like out loud with sound and movements to like somatically not just be like, oh my God, okay, I think that thought away, but you're actually doing something that's like blasting the thought as it's arising. And it's been really helping. Also cool. To help with the shame barrier of like, let me do that in the supermarket. I'm like, bang, like seeing like how where still my box is at play in terms of what's acceptable, what's not. So yeah, the process that they use, they call it emotional healing process, isn't necessarily fixed steps, but I noticed that when a trigger is arising, which I'll try to bring up in Tim in a second, they went through it in like 5-10 minutes, what sometimes we'd need for 45 minutes in a Neo session. Of course, there's some aspects I noticed that it's not as trauma informed. If someone is going back into a memory or an experience where they've had very severe trauma, then I wouldn't necessarily take that. Why are you laughing? No,
shoot the trauma.
Not the shooting thing, Tim. That's just about thoughts. That's a separate tool. But I noticed that there's some aspects where I would go slower depending on who the client is. But if it's someone where you're having a conversation and there's really something present, like an emotion is present, not just a feeling, because they're like, a feeling is about 3 minutes long. If it's longer than that, then it's something older, emotion from the past that's asking to be healed. That also really helped me to understand, like, am I feeling a feeling or am I having an emotion? And feeling a feeling is like, it's bringing me some information. It wants me to do something with that in this moment, and then I can move on with it. Like if I'm hungry and then I get hangry, it's not necessarily because I wasn't given enough food when I'm younger. It's like I'm actually just hungry. My body needs something. I can use this anger to go get up and walk to the kitchen and eat something, versus if something deeper is coming up where it's a core topic linked to food or linked to eating or linked to something that happened that's asking to then bubble up to the surface to express and be healed, and then it's already moved on. So yeah, I really enjoyed the quickness of some of this as well. We did a lot of conscious emotional expression exercises. One of them I'm going to bring in today in a different angle slightly, that one of you is going to practice. And yes, that is all I wanted to share. Thank you.
I have a question. With the so you talked about shooting the thought, and that goes, correct me if I'm wrong, in emotional release and maybe other somatic techniques. We aim at allowing things, and you learned to actually kill a thought or like push it away by by acting like you're shooting it. And this podcast is called spiritual bypassing. Isn't that a way of bypassing the thought? And what's what's the can you explain how that works?
No, I mean, you're not bypassing the thought, because you're still engaging with it as it's something that you know is not what you want to be believing in. So you're like, say, like, if I have a thought like you're not good enough, it's like, okay, like I acknowledge that thought has come in. I don't want that thought to be there because I want to choose the other option. I want to believe that I am good enough. And it's just one of the small somatic tools to bring some awareness into like there's other possibilities than that thought. So it doesn't mean you're necessarily bypassing if there's like deep core emotional wounding and sadness that needs to come up, then of course emotional healing process. But if it's something just in that moment that's like a repetitive aspect, because that's the aspects of mindset work and abundance work that does work, like the repetition drilling into your mind, and you eventually do change your perspective, but it's not the only tool. So we also got to look at like the core beliefs under that.
I see. So this is like for an instant trigger, when you're triggered in a moment and you need like a quick thing to rearrange the situation. You just shoot the thought.
Yeah, maybe it is even trigger is too strong a word. It's just like a thought that's not congruent with they call it like bright principles, like the feeling of like expansion and freedom. Is this bringing me a feeling of that I have options, or is it bringing me into like contraction? And they really guide you to check in with your body with all the answers and things coming through. Like every time a question comes, they're like, I'm not asking your mind, like, don't just tell me because you know what the answer is. Like, feel in your body how disgust could arise, or like whatever, regardless of whatever the question is. And I enjoyed that a lot to really, even though it's a very heady training of like seminar with drawing on the flip chart, but it's still very body focused of like what's actually happening right now. I don't care about 5 minutes ago, like what is present right now. It's also very similar to David Bedrick's way of working, if you've ever watched him do demos in his training. It's about what is present now, expanding it, making it bigger, even bigger, sounding, movement, go. And like most of the time the charge of what is there releases within like a minute or two. Like I said, it's just not the be all and end all. If you want to go really, really deep, then of course I would do a Neo session more. But I already used this with 3 clients in last week, who just from doing like a check-in with me, like at the start of their session, already were coming up with a trigger, you could call it. Their body changes state. There's a contraction. There's something arising, or maybe they notice that they want to cry, but they don't know how, or one of them's getting frustrated. And I was like, well, okay, I have 2 options. I can go lay them on the table and log them in and go through that whole process. Or I can right now ask them to close their eyes and start bringing that energy up more and more and more. The same we do in sessions, that you just don't have to log in, which is kind of cool. So yeah.
Awesome. So you just said you need a trigger to start. Like what would you say we will start with? What's the best thing?
Do you want to go straight into an exercise, or you guys want to ask some more questions? You are like, what is this cult that Ashley's just attended? I'm suspicious. I don't know anything. Blah blah.
I would love to. I would love to.
Sounds really interesting. Especially with the question that you just asked, Tim. To me, my view on this, or my take on this, is that there's the top-down approach, which is probably not as deep, like not working with the core of a trigger, but it works with repetition and like reprogramming and building new habits, and it works. And this is probably what this sounds like. It's like, oh, there's this repeating thought, and then I'm gonna like consciously be aware of that thought, allow it, and then afterwards I'm gonna shoot it and it like blast it and whatever it likes, and that's a pattern interrupt. But of course, there's still the source in your body that's producing those thoughts, and that's not gone. But you can work both ways, and the combination of both, I think, is really powerful. To me, it's probably like the effectiveness is probably like 80% on the bottom up, so really going to the core topic, and then 20% of it of the effectiveness comes from the top down. But at the same time, top down has some advantages, like you said, Ashley, that it's really fast and it's really like on the spot. You can work on it and already get results, and that's great to combine those two. And my question is, do they also focus on those on the source, which in my opinion is emotional repression? So why do we have these beliefs like I'm not good enough? It's because we have to believe this. There's always a utility in that belief, and this belief usually protects us from accessing or having to feel certain really, really painful emotions that in our system are related to death, basically. So if anger is related to death, because anger is related to being left alone by our mom in childhood, then our body keeps the score. Our body like has that probably like programmed into the nervous system and thinks anger is death. And so we need to create this belief, I'm not good enough, to push our anger down. So because that way, when we believe that, we don't have to access the anger. And that's why on the surface level, the thoughts get produced of like, I'm not good enough. And now I've heard from you that one approach, but what about the other approach about really accessing that anger, accessing the core of where these thoughts come from? Did the training also address that aspect?
Yeah. Not in so much the theory, but the emotional healing process in high level is like a trigger. I can give you an example from mine, to be honest, because it's way easier to give like what happened in the training. So it's interesting because I was the first person we were put in pairs to practice this. And I was the first one. They were like, the more experienced person in your pair, if you have experience space holding, you go first. So I was like, boom, I'm going first. Like, I'm experienced. And actually, it was really difficult in the first moments because I realized I had to turn off all the knowledge I knew that I is autopilot from Neo, which I also can sympathize then with James, our elder, who came to the training because he had like 30 years of emotional release experience and came to our training. And he's like, right, I need to just not go into autopilot of just doing the method that I know and understand. Because for me, and I had quite a challenging person because she already from the instructions was starting to panic and to cry. So I didn't even have to like open anything. She already started. So in emotional release, I also learn like if someone is getting into a panicky state, you don't need to exaggerate that. Like if they're panicky, you can bring them into some breathing, into regulating. And I was like 3 seconds into guiding, and one of the team, like not a senior member, but someone from the team came in. She's like, she's already activated. Like you can go. And I'm like, yeah, excuse me. Like for first boundary, I was like, okay, like I literally haven't even said a sentence. Let me at least like make contact with my client and like be able to see what's going on. And in some of their ethos around these deep breaths that we also take, they're also like, yeah, those breaths are also bypassing sometimes. You feel a big feeling, you're like, yeah, I want to get rid of it. I want to breathe out. I want to get rid of this feeling as well. It was an interesting take they also had on release, which I know we're all in the middle ground on anyway. So I was like, okay, great. With my client, I was like, okay, she's panicking. And I'm like, okay, let yourself like notice what's going on, taking some breaths. And then boom, the head teacher 10 seconds later came in. She's like, Ashley, she's activated. You can go. You don't have to release. You don't need to breathe this. Like, just go into it. And I'm like, can I please have a moment to talk to my client? Back off. Like I literally was like I was triggered in that response. Like I was like, yeah, please leave me alone. Like I'm trying to practice here. And it's very hard for me to like move this out of my brain of Neo and how to do this with their method. And we talked about it afterwards when I guided and we shared, and I was like, yeah, I did not appreciate this. Like I didn't even have like 10 seconds to talk before both of you came in. And they were like, we totally hear that and we'll take note of that. And not everybody would have reacted with such a trigger. So I was like, oh, amazing. I have some gold I can work with here, because there was a reason I was so aggravated with this person's head coming round that not everybody would react in that way. So I used that to go into when I received. And when I started, it felt like the process is very simple. It's like, bring up what is arising right now. Okay, noticing, letting the sensations be there. Okay, I was feeling anger. So I was like, letting the breath and the sounds, and I let this person's face come around here. And even though it was a female facilitator, it felt like a very masculine energy coming around my shoulder, and I was like getting really angry. And they work with towels a lot, actually, like just little hand towels that you can already sit and squeeze to like start to build this energy up. And it was really, really helpful. I'm going to bring this into all of my sessions and retreats now, to start activating at the hands. And this is where the beautiful combination of Neo did come in my own experience, because I felt this oppressive energy of masculine. And then I felt a sharp pain here on my left side, which is the heart point, but it's also the mother point. And through that, I was like, oh, it feels like I'm being stabbed here with a knife. I'm being stabbed. And it felt very ancient. Like in this short 2 minutes, I got to the same depths that I do in a Neo session of receiving. I could already tap into like the feeling of it. I could tap into like the imagery behind it. And then I realized that this is also the grief. There was one point they were like, actually, there's no anger here right now. What is here? Like the person picking up on resonance. Then there's like sadness. And I was like, oh, this feels like really ancient feminine sadness of grief, of losing children, of losing babies. And I was like, fuck, this is like my mother lost 3 babies. Like this was so much of her grief that was coming out. And then they're like, let it be here, cry, go. And they really encourage like the wailing and the sadness and to the leaning back aspects that I also have done in the anger releases. It then transitioned to, 1 second, let me just get my thought again, because it was quite important. It was like they bring in self-responsibility, because of course you can be a victim. I can be a victim of that story. Like my mother had all this grief and I hold all this grief for her. And it's like, no, actually, what would the self-responsible version of this be? And it's like, I am drawing a boundary here. Like, this is yours, mum. I give this back to you. This is yours to hold. I also want to grieve my siblings, but that's my journey and I cannot hold all of this for you. And like giving that aspect back. And after that, there was just two last little bits that came up was around, I realized I had a lot of anger towards one of the babies, because it was the baby that caused this separation between me and my mother. And yeah, that was very weird in that moment to express anger. I'd never noticed or even thought of that being an option. And it was very moving to like move through that. And all of this happened in 5 minutes. Like then I was already coming back. There was a little aspect around, are you allowing fear in this moment? And the teacher even like held back my chair so I could get used to tapping into more the feeling of fear, because it's an emotion that I really block often. And all in all, it was very beautiful. I feel like vulnerability hangover having shared this. And there's a part of me that's worried that you guys don't find this interesting, and that you are like, oh, Ashley was hyping this up so much and we can't, I'm feeling sad that I can't fully express the magic of what I went through there. I just wanted to voice that.
Okay, interesting, because I felt I was listening, and as I was listening, I started to get more tired. I was like, what is going on here? Because the content of what you're sharing is great, and I was, it wasn't like I was dozing off. I was listening all the way, but I think there was some resonance happening with that, and a part of me also wanted to dive into it and to experience all the things that you talk about. But it was touching, and also, I was tired, but what you said wasn't wrong or uninteresting or anything. I think I could feel that worry in you speaking.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt really interested in what you shared and touched, especially when you shared about you being angry at the baby. And since I know you and I know those spaces, and I can imagine how it must have been and felt, I was able to see the magic in it. And at the same time, I could also probably feel this fear inside of you of like, oh, is it like, am I going to convince them that there was this magic? Am I going to be able to really like explain to them and make them feel the same thing that I felt? And no, probably not. And it's not even like the goal of this session. But yes, I'm super curious right now about the method. And I also felt similarly on that aspect with, to Tim, wanting to know what the technique is, because you kept repeating that, yeah, it's a very simple technique, and I think we could already see some of that in what you shared. But then at the same time, it also felt like once the emotion comes up, like once the trigger is there, the situation that you had with your client right in front of you, and they said, she's activated, you can go now. What does it actually mean to go now, like to go on that energy? So maybe you can share a little bit more about what this technique includes.
Yeah, the go is essentially to enhance the emotional expression. So working with the face, it's what we do in sessions anyway, like getting the face involved, asking for sounds, because for a lot of people, sounds are very triggering, even if it's just that you sense there's anger and they're like, and you're like, open your mouth, even just a little bit, and they're like, and that starts it, like to really get the vocal aspect going. And then getting things like the hands involved, depending on what emotion is present. So, of course, anger is obvious with the towel. A beautiful one I observed someone doing also was that they felt this like sadness in their chest, and it was actually to like show with your hands, like, how does that sadness look like what is the texture of it, how to take a breath and to go like, oh, and really contract the hands as if they were like really holding the sadness. And to, again, I've seen this also in David Bedrick's work, that that's a way of really the somatic expression. And they encourage that well before any words come in. So it's easy to go in the words, you're going up to the head. The words actually come more to the end. So it's like not to the end, but like after sounds, after body, after expression, after like really go louder, more, go, louder, more. And we do a lot of exercises at this training about getting to 100% emotions. So seeing where your numbness bar is, like what percentage is your numbness bar at, where you normally just don't feel the emotions until they get to maybe 30, 50, most people in society probably 70, 80%. And then they have an outburst because they didn't notice below that bar that they had anger building up or they had sadness building up because they're numb to it and using numbing mechanisms. So this process of, they call it stellating emotions, 100% emotions, I really loved. I've been practicing this since the training, and I'm doing practice days the next 6 weeks before I leave Europe, with the person who I went with, to keep getting to more levels. Like Tim, we did this also in Portugal together, very briefly, the 100% emotions practice, where that came from this training. That's what they mean.
I
So like really finding new possibilities of like, how much can I cathartic in fear? How much can I show in joy? How much can I show in anger?
Expanding the box.
Yeah, it was so funny. I loved that when we did that in Portugal. I was like, people would probably see this and put us in a mental home or something. But
Wow. We have a recording of that. Maybe we'll add it to the
podcast.
We
can add a clip. Yes, I will send it to you guys.
I love that. Maybe I have the need to share that the underlying principle, at least that seems to me, of this is like basically healing means processing emotions, right? And the emotions that are there in the body that can't be expressed, to become aware of them first, to activate them, to make them bigger, and then to feel them, to process them, and also combine them with somatic expression, because when you express these things and find new ways of expressing them, it's going to be easier to probably, you could call it like align the emotion and the body and the mind as well. So you probably, it's about finding alignment, if I get it right, between
there's still one more step as well.
Okay, yeah.
So the last step
we
is,
get it right, because I think we should not get ahead of ourselves and be like, because you know so much about this method now, but people might not even understand like why is this good? Why should I like go into it? What's the underlying healing principle of this?
Yeah. That's something you wanted to answer, or just...
That's something I wanted to, like, I think I already like shared my take on this, but I'd love to hear yours and from what you experienced.
Yeah, fully. It's for the majority of us in society, and I'm saying us just because we're talking about collectively. Like normally we talk from I or myself, but I can actually do that. So for me, the start of my journey, the prospect of making sounds, of making faces, of doing things that involve looking weird, that was not an option for me. It was not even something that I'd seen as a possibility, that if I'm feeling anger, I could sit in my room and make an angry face and move some of that energy through and allow myself to find the message underneath it. And that's what I also bring into a lot of my workshops. Like, it's actually very playful and childish and silly at times, because we realize how many masks we've collected through this box that stops us from really just being raw humans expressing. So yes, sounding, the movement, the unshaming, is, in my opinion, a foundational aspect of healing, because it's actually just very human. We just forgot how to do it along the way.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
what it
probably I
reminds
would
me
even
of would
say that the material of the box, it could be shame. Just throwing that in there. Like if you think of a box and what is it made out of, it might be shame that it's made out of. Just food for
And
thought. But sorry, Tim, I
I want to hear
interrupted your
Tim.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, so David Bedrick, famously, I almost said, David Bedrick famously works with process-oriented therapy, which is focusing on the present moment and on what is emerging in the here and now without necessarily having a goal in that moment. Like the process itself is the goal. And what I hear from, like, when I listen to the possibility management, like what it reminded me of was sometimes there's moments when we surrender to the process. Like it's such a cliche to say that, but it's super difficult actually to focus on the process and to let whatever wants to come up without asking yourself, is this valid? Does this make sense? Is this leading somewhere? Whatever. But when you do that for some time, and I love these moments, what happens is you're surprised by yourself, because all of a sudden something is showing up that you didn't know before. Like you make a sound, or you like make a movement, or a feeling is showing, or a thought is showing, and we're like, oh fuck, where is this coming from? This is kind of interesting. This is kind of resonating with me. And this is to me like super interesting, always about body work, and also what process oriented therapy talks about is that the body is sending all of these signals to like into consciousness, just like a dream is sending messages into consciousness. And these are like very, like, I feel like the more spontaneous and the more unplanned they are, and the better the space is held in a way that makes these spontaneous, like eruptions almost happen, the more fluid and the more yet the more towards healing the flow of the session will be. And I felt like this was very much what was happening, like full allowance, and then getting into the catharsis, but not for the sake of letting go or releasing an emotion. That was basically always the difficulty in the language I had with emotional release. Like we're talking
Yeah.
about acceptance, but in the language, it's like we want to let go of something. Like when I let go of something, I'm holding it, I'm letting go, and it falls somewhere. Like I want to get rid of it. And I feel like in what you're sharing, Ashley, it's fully like focusing on the process without necessarily having any other goal than expanding our capacity to be with an emotion and to expand the box in that way. Like, and that I found that like interesting to listen to. And as you said, like very much in line with like what David Bedrick is saying, and like the principles of process oriented approaches.
Yeah. Very well explained, Tim.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
going into my teaching mode. I noticed that.
that was so beautiful. And I couldn't agree more that letting go really means to be really intimate with what you want to let go of in the
Hmm.
end. And you let go of this goal of, this needs to go away. This needs to not be a part of me. And you go the other way around, because the thought of this should not be a part of me is the reason why it's still there, and you're not letting it go. And then being really intimate and like taking it fully in, fully on, really looking at it, making it really big, becoming really spacious for it to really get all the space it needs. That is the letting go process, but it's quite the opposite, really, if you think
It's
about
letting
it.
it in. It's
Yeah.
It's letting in.
You're letting it dissolve into nothingness inside you. It just becomes
Exactly.
life force energy you can use for
Yeah.
the next thing.
And I find it so important to really look at the language we're using, because that's also what's creating possibility or limitations. Like if I feel I need to release an emotion, that's already a belief. Like my goal is to like let go of this, and why haven't I let go of this? Where
It's a
like what's
story.
actually happening is exactly. It's a story. I'm the protagonist. I have this goal, and if I'm failing, then I failed on my mission, and obviously that automatically makes me feel bad. And if I succeed on that emotion, dopamine is released. I feel amazing. I get inflated, and like the whole story. So I think it's in the end, it's just about expanding the box and expanding the capacity of holding ourselves and containing ourselves. That's why I'm like very much a fan of like recently also with clients, I'm less working with catharsis and more with containment and the ability to really embody whatever is present and to expand that. Super important.
Containment is ironic when we talk about containment, especially when people are like, but I see you do emotional release. Maybe we need to change our whole branding and wordings around what we do.
I mean, I wonder what would happen if we did that. And also what other ways of describing this, what other possibilities open up if we describe it in different words.
I would love to open that possibility question to the people listening, that if you think of other ways that describe this work of integrating your emotions, then please let us know, because we've had multiple philosophical discussions about this, trying to find a way to talk about this in a different way, that it's not release, and it's not mastery, it's not about necessarily bringing in, it's not about making peace necessarily, it's not about forgiveness, it's like a combination of all of this. And we're a little bit stuck with that, I'm not gonna lie, after some
we have no idea what the fuck is actually happening. Jesus.
Yeah. That's actually one of the that's one of the exercises that we did, is called What is Happening, is one of the
amazing.
It's great. It's basically 10 minutes
I'm doing this exercise every morning.
It was 10 minutes of when you sit in a circle, and whenever you feel an impulse, you can just go into the circle and do it, and you can speak everything that comes to your mind, and you can do anything you want, and that just happened for 10 minutes with 25 people.
Wow,
it was quite amusing.
Fun.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
So shall we?
Actually, earlier you shared, Ashley, that there was a step missing. Is there still a step missing in the process?
Oh yeah, good one.
Yes. So the last part that you want to bring in is that they'll start to guide what is present here. Like where are you right now? Because when this emotion and this process is happening, it's not often that they're in the room. They're like, oh, I'm this age. Are you inside or outside? Like, what's happening right now? And it's again what we would do for the conversions, when you start to notice like a scene or a setting that you're in. That's also for my process. It was very easy for this memory to come up, this age, this topic to arise, and that's where some of the like more cognitive processing can come in to understand what's happening, that I also enjoyed. So they didn't start with it, because in Neo we'd maybe start with that, like, where are you, how old are you, what are you feeling, what is there, can you allow this, can you let this part feel this, moving up into slowly into a catharsis or some kind of process. And this was just the other way around in a sense, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And it's usually very powerful to me as well in psychedelic processes. So you have a psychedelic trip, you experience something, what's there, very enhanced, very like strong version of what's inside of you that's coming up. And then afterwards you do the integration, the mental process happens, which is basically like, okay, what just happened there? Maybe, oh, I felt like a 3-year-old. Oh yeah, that's what was happening there.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then by doing the integration, the mind-body connection, you make sense of it and you are able to integrate it and make a change.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I wanted to bring in also one aspect that was an interesting shift in perspective, was talking around mixed emotions. So, when we're like, oh, I feel angry and sad, and sometimes we allow them both to be there in emotional release, and in their process it was often more like, no, which one is more present? Like, when you mix, it's easy to not take responsibility for one of them because you're like, yeah, I feel both, it's okay. And you can work with both, but better to put a focus on one. So an example of that is shame, that in their teaching is a mixture of anger and sadness. I was like, interesting. Yes. And I had this come up with a client. I was like, yeah, it could be that shame is a mixture of those two emotions. Which one is more present right now? And they're like, oh yeah, anger. So it was a nice guiding way to get beneath the cover emotion, which we've talked about: anger, guilt, regret, shame. Sorry, not anger, scratch the first one. But those are covering, and sometimes it was hard to get beneath that and just giving them options. That's why I just love it. Like, I keep using the word possibility now all the time because it's very helpful. That's maybe the cult language that I've got, but it's it's given me more possibilities of what to say.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do some
So
exercises with
Yeah. Okay. I have two, because I want to do one for both of you. So I have one that is more around a story. Don't worry, Jannick, we're not doing storytelling fantasy stuff. He doesn't want to do that today.
You don't have to become a dwarf today.
Maybe we should go with your resistance, Jannick, but we won't today. We'll do an improv episode at some point, because Tim and I are excellent at improv and we love it. So we can play around with that at some point. But one of them was around a story, and one of them is around some conscious anger. Who feels like what today?
What's the first one?
Story or conscious anger?
Conscious anger.
Both involve 2 rounds of an exercise: a round and then a pause, and then a round, and then we finish. So you both have the same amount of work to do.
Fuck.
I still just love that Tim's descending into the night like Dracula. Light is vanishing.
I am. Maybe that's a sign, and I should be telling the story of Dracula today. I also wear quite Dracula clothes.
Yeah.
So I'm going with the storytelling.
Okay, so Tim is going to go first then.
I feel like I play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire now. I'm taking the Dracula.
Amazing. So Tim, what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 rounds of a story, and you're going to tell Jannick and I, are going to do some active listening, some responsible listening.
I need that.
You will have 2 minutes to share to answer this question, and there's no guidance right now of how to answer it. Like, you're really just welcome to go. If there's emotions that arise, they're also welcome. If you have moments where you don't know what to say, it's also okay. There's no prompt of how you need to answer. It's basically just answering the question. Is that something you feel that you can do right now?
Yeah, I didn't understand what I'm exactly doing, but I think the prompt will help me, right?
You're just answering a question for 2 minutes.
Cool. All right.
You could even do 3 if you want to, if you feel chatty today.
Okay, let's see.
How are you feeling?
God, I'm super excited. Oh my God. I have like this warm stage fright feeling in my gut. I'm like,
beautiful. So actually what we can do to start is you can put your hand just below your belly button where your physical center is, which is probably where you're feeling that feeling right now, and just sensing your physical body center rooted. Maybe you want to take a breath into it. And just for a moment, also sensing your energetic center, so the bubble around you, 1 meter around you, Tim's bubble. Jannick, you're also welcome to imagine yours if you don't want to receive too much of what Tim's going to share, taking care of your own space as well. Okay, Tim, I would love for you to share with Jannick and I about the most intense moment of your life. And you can just trust what comes up.
Okay. What was the most intense moment of my life? Oh, yeah, that's easy. It's not easy. There was quite some intensity in my life, but I'm going. So I'm just talking about that now. Yeah. Okay. So I was falling in love with a woman from Australia around 2 years ago. Was it 2 years? I think it was 2 years, 1.5 years. quite some time ago, and it was the most intense love that I felt for a human being. Later, I found out that it wasn't love, but it was like a toxic trauma relationship bond. It felt like I was in ecstasy for 4 months straight. I sold everything that I had. I gave up my flat. I basically gave up my life in Germany, said goodbye to all of my friends, said goodbye to all of my family in a manner of 3 weeks, like not three, like a very short time, like 2 months or something. It was very impulsive, but I needed to be with that woman and start a family there. Like the whole grandiosity. So I did that. The whole thing, like I'm going to leave in 2 weeks and I need to get rid of all of my stuff. Super stressful. I'm on the plane. I land in Australia, and the woman turns out to be extremely dismissive. Our relationship dynamic turns out to be very, very toxic. And I'm there for 1 week. Don't want to go into the details because this is public, but it was absolutely terrible. I've been building a beautiful castle of beauty and future aspirations. I'm going to start a family with this woman, the whole thing, the whole positive projection mumbo jumbo. And all of this got smashed within 1 week. And I was like, either we need to talk about it or I'm going to leave. She didn't end up really giving me a clear answer that she wants to talk about it. So I left, was in Melbourne for 2 weeks after that, had no money at some point. My parents were supporting me, God bless them. I went to New Zealand after that to live at a friend's place for free. And during that time, I just had a complete meltdown. Like I never felt as close to like suicidal. I know I was going through a thing, but there was like suicidal ideations, a lot of intensity, heartbreak, still in that like toxic dynamic. Yeah. So that was that was very intense. Like I felt quite a good amount of like I never felt as depressed as I felt back then. So yeah.
Okay, take a moment to close your eyes. And just notice how the sharing of that, notice what it's done in your body. Noticing any sensations, any state that your body is in, having shared that story. Jannick, you're welcome to do the same as a receiver, to just notice what that did inside of you. So in a moment, Tim, I'm going to ask you to tell us that story again, but I want to invite you to tell it from a radical self-responsible position. And what I mean by that is, in what ways did you, in some way, also contribute to this having happened? And not because we're here to shame, but because we're trying to find a different perspective and possibility and move forward with this as well.
Yes.
You may begin.
Okay. So this is also freestyle sharing without any interruptions from your side? Okay. So where do I start? Back then I was close to like I projected basically all of my wishes and dreams and desires that I couldn't fulfill by myself, or I didn't want to, or I wasn't ready, or I wasn't taking responsibility for fulfilling these and manifesting these things in my life. I was projecting them into the relationship. And I was like, if I fly to this woman, I will have a job, I will have a family, I will have this, I will have that, all the things that I wanted. So there was a lot of expectation and a lot of stuff to fill that void and to fill also that that longing for for something exciting to happen in my life. Like my life was exciting, but there was still like something was lacking. And what I didn't do was I wasn't listening to my friends, first of all. Like there were people telling me, hey Tim, this is not healthy. And I was still deciding not to see a therapist, for example, to get a second opinion, or to properly listen to someone, and decided to follow that feeling. And that's what made me. That's where I made myself led by like unconscious forces. It was almost like I was completely molded or like completely blended with one part of me, and there was no distance. Like I was completely like in a trance, and I didn't step out of that trance because it would have meant way too painful things to do that, because then I would need to go back into my old state. So I didn't want that. And so how I created the situation was, and I did quite some work on that, is I didn't look at my life honestly and uprightly, and was asking myself, am I really happy? And then this woman came, like this one-way ticket to happiness and fulfillment, and all of the things that I didn't allow myself for myself, generating out of myself, and that's how I felt for it. So that's how I would. That's a very like short explanation. Yeah, that's what came up.
Yeah. And let's take a second to close your eyes again, just like we did before. And both of you register in your body what you notice, what sensations, what feeling is present, having spoken or having listened, or having listened to yourself speak. And I want to give us a moment for Tim to share what you noticed, and Jannick as well, as your partner in this exercise, how that was for you.
So the first sharing that I did, both like while I was sharing, both felt quite similar. My both of my legs are shaking right now, like ADHD kind of restless leg kind of shaking. So I have a lot of energy like rising up, and I want to get up and I want to start running. So I think this is what I felt, and during the sharing. But after the first sharing, I felt a lot of joy and like gratitude for, oh wow, this really sucked, and now I'm blessed with such an amazing life, and it made me aware of that, of the contrast. And I felt joy in my body, like a warm feeling, and like I don't know, aspiration or something like that. Like I want to move on. And then after the second sharing, I felt like I could feel my neck getting a bit tight, and there was like some darkness and contraction in my chest and in my face area, neck area, something like that. And there was like a part of me who said, yeah, who was like more grown up, less jumpy, who was felt like he was standing there with like his arms crossed and said, you did that, like that's the lesson you needed to learn, and you feel like you're all over it, or like you've completed that cycle. But beware, it's like this, I don't know, like almost this father kind of energy who is like, yes, I'm happy for you, and like, look, this is serious. And there was like some tension and resentment with that. Very, very subtly, like very, very subtle. There's, it's both. It's this excitement, and then was a slight contraction in my chest. And also, who's like watching me, being like, wanting to jump up, and who's also saying like, hey, this is the energy that also was misguided back then. Like you were jumping and you were running without thinking about it. You were following your impulses without second guessing. And that can be dangerous. It was interesting. Like that my legs are like, I want to run. And back then I was just running and, not thinking about whether I want to run or if it's healthy or whatever. So that's
Is
my
there?
experience.
Thank you for explaining what happened for you. Is there a way that you can view that part, this looking over energy part, that's actually doing it because he cares for you and that he loves you?
Yes, absolutely. Like I don't even have to think twice about it, because he's not even an inner critic that I have to actively shift into loving. I can actually appreciate that because it made me conscious of that skepticism and a healthy, okay, let's take a breath, let's look at this, is a good thing, like whenever it comes to relationship. And also this grandiosity and this Begeisterung, this when you're really like enchanted by something and I want to have that, I need that, I want to do that, it's the best thing ever, best day of my life, it's going to be so great. All of this energy is like to be treated with a slight tinge of caution, and I'm thankful for that part, that he's bringing that
Can I catch
maturity
you there,
in.
Tim? Because you're talking a lot. I just want to ask: does it feel like the energy of that part is something that's supporting you? It's behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something you'd be available to lean back in your chair just to feel that part is really there with
Yeah.
these big hands, like, hey, just going to catch you at certain moments when that energy maybe is getting too hyper, and I'm not here as an enemy. I'm here to hold you, and just let yourself lean back into it. So those of you who are listening, Tim's body is relaxing, his face is relaxing. I invited him to do this because he's very much in his mind. He's very intellectual and can talk and talk, but sometimes the body just needs to process the experience that it had. This feeling of this responsible part is here to hold me, to kind of steer my shoulders as I move through life.
He says, I've been waiting for you. Almost feels like the hand, like I almost feel like a baby. Like I almost feel like I'm wearing diapers. And the hand is like, sometimes when parents hold their child, like almost like Lion King, like this hold.
And really see if your body wants to follow that movement a bit, how you really would be if you were held in that position. Seeing if there's a sound that wants to come with this as we start to bring this to a close, just to really imprint that experience into your body. For those of you on the audio, Tim is burping, which is very common when he's processing his emotions. Jannick, how is your experience of Tim's process? You don't have to rush back, Tim, if you don't want
to. Yeah. A lot happened there for me while I was listening. While he was sharing the stories, I noticed that there was compassion coming up, because I can relate to the way he felt there, not in the intensity, I think, but definitely in these kind of feelings and this kind of excitement and expectation and the things he shared. And then I also noticed judgment coming up. It was like almost like judgments, like, yeah, but that was stupid, or I wouldn't have gone to this intensity and stuff like that. And then as we are talking about responsibility, I also took responsibility for the judgment, and then noticed inside of me a part that was like judging this inside of me. This like, oh, I can get really excited. I can make very impulsive decisions that later on I judge as being stupid or childish, or whatever the wording might be. And I don't fully accept that and own that. So it was, for me, it was also a process of ownership, taking ownership and account, and being responsible for what arises. And I think it's really beautiful when you listen to someone and you feel judgment or triggers coming up inside of you. It's another invitation there to look, where can I be more responsible, and are there other options than being judgmental about the story. And then later, I really liked how you brought Tim back into the body, and you used the lean, kind of like for him to lean back and support him, and really go into the somatics of what happened there instead of the analyzing mind.
Cool. Thank you. Anything you guys want to say to each other in this moment?
Yeah, I just want to say, Tim, that I think you're really brave, and I feel a lot of compassion for what you shared, and I admire also and respect the ability to take ownership and responsibility when you shared in the second story. And I'm in love with this. I love to take responsibility myself, and I also love when other people do it. And I actually strongly believe that this is the truth. I think like the truth is that we are creating the reality. And so the more responsibility we take, the more we are the closer we are to that truth, that we created this, and we get out of the victim state. So it's beautiful to witness that in you.
Thanks. Yeah, that feels that I can receive that, and at the same time, I've talked about this and I felt through this so much that I rarely, it's not crossing my mind. Like it's not something that is still living in my body or that needs to be processed. So it also made, like, looking back, I would have chosen a more, story that I haven't, that's more like floating around maybe. And yeah, that's why it's also easy for me to take ownership about that, because I needed to do that in order to heal that wound.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't anything like, the more I pointed the finger towards that person, the more I realized I'm actually just twisting a knife in my heart in that way. And I needed to be to take on responsibility for that. And that also taught me a lot about responsibility, in that sense, that I was like, hey, wait a second, I'm acting like this person is to blame, but actually it's all me, and I needed to go through that, and I did it, and I came out the other end. It was, I think it was my initiation. Like, it was genuinely like a rites of passage that that men do in their 20s. I think that was mine. I'm 30 now, and
Well,
yeah.
and this is also, it's quite a big question, like the most intense moment. And I imagine a lot of people, when they answer it, have done quite a lot of processing around it. And I almost wonder, the invitation is there, like, to go find questions or scenarios in your mind, or things that have happened that are less intense, that maybe it's harder to take the responsibility for. You can play around with, like, okay, it's of course like the most intense. I had a very beautiful analogy I shared with everyone when I did this, that the first story was like, I had a really bad sandwich, and I was like, this sandwich tasted so bad and it was horrible and like really gross, moldy, all of this. And when I explained the second round, the same story, it was like 2 years before, I was like, why did I pick that bread? Oh, I picked that bread. And I chose that mayo, and I chose that chicken to go in it. Okay. And it gave like a whole new perspective, and neither is to shame or blame, but it was like, oh wow, like actually, yeah, we're here to learn, we're here to make mistakes, fuck up, clean up, keep going. And that was just helped to bring less charge to this really, really bad sandwich that was very painful, and what to do with that as well. So thank you, Tim, for being our volunteer for this. And the other exercises, Jannick, I would love to take you through. Maybe we can do a conscious rage, because I have many exercises on that we could do on another episode. Would be really beautiful.
I'd love that. Love to
Yes,
see
definitely.
Jannick freaking out. Something I love.
And I
taking full
want to say one
responsibility for
last
that.
thing before we close. It's that what just came to me is that these two fundamental basic energies of, we can call them sadness and anger, or grief and anger, whatever you want to call them, that are necessary to process. It's just so beautiful to be able to access both of them and not be blocked in one or the other aspects. Because with those two energies, you are able to heal and process through these events. You need the grief. You need to be just like sad and which is probably closer to a victim state of like, I am the victim of this bad sandwich, and it's making me feel so sad. Yeah. It's
Victim, like
really
the
sad.
sandwich killer. Yeah.
And then at the same time, and then on the other hand, it's like, I'm fucking angry. Like, why did this happen to me? I'm angry. First of all, maybe angry at the sandwich, but then also I'm just angry, and what the fuck? I want to change this. How do I really change this? And when you really become interested in changing it, and not only grieving it, but actually changing it, then you just notice this truth in yourself that for this to change, I need to take ownership. Otherwise, it won't change. And you become so interested in changing it that then you allow yourself to go into that ownership state. And this is such a big realization, that how interested are you actually in changing this situation? Because maybe you're not so interested yet. You're still in the grieving phase. You're more in the victim stage. It's not about changing. It's about processing what happened there. And the more it becomes about changing, the more you shift that energy. And then you're ready, and you move on, and you move past this. You're not indulging in this anymore.
Exactly. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for this little opportunity for me to explain my magical experience, and I cannot wait for part 2 to guide Jannick into some conscious rage exercises.
Yes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Ashley. This was really powerful and beautiful, and I'm really happy for you that you did the training. And I can see shifts happening not only in your work, but also within yourself, and the way you communicate, and your excitement about this. It's really beautiful to witness that.
Thank you. I can receive that. And I'm going to convince you both to come with me to the next one.
I would love that.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys in the next episode. Enjoy your time. Bye-bye.
Subscribe, comment, and what else? You know the drill.
Yeah,
See you next time.